This video is about living on Mars, what life on the red planet will be like. The conditions of Mars. Mars is an extremely cold world and very hostile to life as we know it. The average temperature on Mars is just as cold or colder than Antarctica. The atmosphere is only about 1% as thick as it is on Earth, but it does actually have some water vapor in it that can form clouds over mountains. The poles, the north and south poles of Mars, contain frozen carbon dioxide called dry ice. There is also frozen water there as well, and there may or may not be underground aquifers of liquid water. Mars also has extremely large dust storms that can block out the sun for months. In fact, these dust storms were a major problem for the probes that were sent down to Mars to study the surface. Since these probes were solar powered, the dust storms blocking out the sun almost starved them of the power they needed, which could be a problem in the future because near future colonies in Mars will also use solar panels to generate electricity. Martian structures. The buildings on Mars will be very light. They will not be made from materials like steel, although it is actually possible that they could be made from a alternate form of concrete that can be made from materials on Mars. But even then, the buildings on Mars will be very light compared to what we have on Earth because spacecraft cannot haul heavy materials like steel from Earth to Mars. It's simply impossible right now. And even on Mars, if they're building something from the local resources, they will still be more restricted by weight than we would be here on Earth. It's also likely that many of these buildings would be shaped like domes, especially places like farms, which could have a significant amount of glass in them. It's also very, very possible that living areas might be underground in order to protect the inhabitants from solar radiation. Buildings that are built above ground could also be the spacecraft themselves, and they could use a layer of liquid water inside the walls to use that as a shield against solar radiation. Farming on Mars. The Martian soil is not like Earth's soil. It could be possible to grow some types of plants in it, but it would still need to be processed and have any toxins filtered out and then be enriched with nutrients before it could be used. Farms could also use a method of growing called hydroponics, which is very effective, especially because it does not actually use soil. Hydroponics is the practice of growing plants directly on water. This is effective because it's much more efficient at using that water. It does not waste anything. Water, of course, could be extracted from the nearby area. We do know that there is frozen water on Mars, and that could simply be brought over. Now, farming is a very important aspect that will need to start right from the beginning of the colony. Once the settlers are there, it's very unlikely that they would receive further shipments of food from Earth to Mars, simply because it would take far too long. So they would need to be able to start farming from the very beginning of their colony. There are a list of potential health problems that may or may not exist for people on Mars. Now, we know about these health problems because astronauts in the International Space Station have faced them. but we don't exactly know if the gravity of Mars will be high enough in order to mitigate or prevent these problems from occurring. And here are the problems. Most of these are all caused by the mostly by the low gravity on Mars. The low gravity could cause people's muscles and bones to weaken. This is something we've observed in the International Space Station, where astronauts who live in a zero gravity, or more specifically a microgravity environment, where gravity is so small that it might as well not exist, and their body basically begins to weaken. And once they return to Earth, they always require extensive, almost a training of sorts, to be able to properly function on Earth again. This could also likely be a problem on Mars, though if it is, it may not be as severe as it is on the International Space Station, because there is at least some gravity. There is also a lot of solar radiation that reaches the surface of Mars. Our Earth protects us from solar radiation with its magnetic field. However, Mars does not have a strong magnetic field like Earth does. A magnetic field is fueled by the core of a planet. Earth has a very large, hot core, and Mars's core is not as powerful as Earth's is. This means that the magnetic field on Mars is going to be smaller and weaker, and this is why I previously mentioned the protections from solar radiation, because this radiation could cause colonists to face problems like cancer. And I listed 2 ways that they could protect themselves from it. Another major problem will be that colonists will face communication delays. I've heard this be referred to as light lag by other people. And this is a problem where a message from Earth to Mars, or from Mars to Earth, would generally take about 20 minutes to reach the other planet, and then of course, once they send a response, another 20 minutes to get back. This would mean that in total there's about 40 minutes or more of waiting for a response. And this means that if something goes wrong on Mars, they will need to fix it immediately by themselves, because it would take them too long to send a distress call to Earth, and it would take even longer, months, for Earth to send physical help, like for example a spacecraft with relief supplies. So Martian colonists would need to be prepared for something going wrong. And it is known that things like landslides can actually occur on Mars. Of course, the chance of it ruining a colony is very low, but it still exists. So the colonists would need to be self-sufficient in regards to disaster management. Then there are actually mental problems that the colonists could face. The first Martian colonies are going to be very small. Our spacecraft right now cannot haul many people or items. And this means that combined with the communication delay, the colonists will be living with a very small, isolated group of people. This could potentially have severe mental effects on them, like for example, creating conflict between different people. And this might require the colonists to actually pass a psychological screening or psychological exam in order to make sure that they will not break down after some amount of time of living on Mars. They could also be helped by computer programs that are developed in order to help them in the same way that a doctor would help someone here on Earth, since those same experts will not be over there with them. There is a concept called terraforming, which is the idea of eventually changing Mars so much that Mars in the future will be more similar to Earth than it is to Mars right now. This would require extensively manipulating the planet's atmosphere, and more specifically increasing the size and strength of the planet's atmosphere and magnetic field. Now, this will be an extremely long process that will not be done anytime soon. Even the best estimates say that this will take hundreds of years to accomplish, but it is still worth it, because we would literally be creating a new world just like Earth. And the biggest challenge here is to strengthen Mars's magnetic field, because solar wind, solar radiation, another thing that it does along with harming humans, is it actually blows away the atmosphere of planets. Mars, one of the main reasons it's believed that Mars has such a small atmosphere is that it had its original atmosphere mostly blown away by solar radiation. We do believe that Mars actually once had a much larger atmosphere and even liquid water on its surface, but everything was ruined by solar radiation because the planet was not large enough to have a extremely hot core. Now, what we will need to do here is find a way to artificially strengthen the magnetic field, and there are a few ways that have been proposed. For example, I saw one diagram of using Earth's magnetic field as almost a sort of shadow for Mars, which probably would not be very possible. Another method that has been proposed is to use lots of robots to strengthen Mars's magnetic field. And if we manage to accomplish this, then the hardest part of terraforming would be over. What we would need to do then is get the atmosphere of the planet to grow in size, and we could do that by heating up the planet and making it so that the gases that are trapped in the north and south poles and the gases that are trapped inside the soil of Mars itself would be released into the atmosphere. It's not known if this would be enough to create an environment similar to Earth, so it is possible that we would need to perhaps even inject other gases into the atmosphere. Now, that would take an extremely long time, and that would probably be the one thing that could really turn out to be a big mistake, because if we go through all the trouble of creating a strong magnetic field on Mars only to find out that Mars literally doesn't have enough gas to form a large atmosphere, and we don't have a good enough way to increase the size of the atmosphere anymore, then we would basically find out that everything we've done was pointless and that Mars could not be terraformed at all. So this is a very risky option, but if it does work out, it would yield amazing fruits, since there would be a lot more. We could potentially have much more people live on Mars that is terraformed than live on the hostile desert world that it is today. Thank you for watching this video. Please like and subscribe.